Hello, hello, family and friends. Happy Marvelous Monday to you. I hope that you are all well. Thank you so much for tuning in for our weekly live session. Today, we are discussing events and things that I believe landlords and tenants should know before renting during the pandemic. So, hope that you are prepared to take notes. Hope that you're prepared to share this information on today. If some information that I share with you is helpful, please feel free to forward. Share this information because sharing is caring. For those of you who are just tuning in to watch the landlord and tenant conversations for the first time, I am Carissa Spain. I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in. I am the landlord and tenant coach, landlord and tenant expert, and this is what I do each and every Monday right here on Facebook and YouTube. So, notifications of when I upload tenants. So if you have, all right, so we are having some technical difficulties, but we're going to keep plowing through it. So, but if you have questions or comments, go and drop it in the comment section. And so today, all right, I'm back. Thank you for that, Lynette. Listen, I don't know what's going on, but we're going to keep moving, Lynette. Thank you so much for tuning in from Charlotte. If this is your first time tuning in, please let me know where you're watching from. I always want to give information that will help my viewers. I had someone who inboxed me a little earlier from Raleigh, North Carolina, and they wanted some information on renting in Raleigh. My goal is to share information that will help landlords and tenants. So anywhere in the United States, if you are a landlord or if you are a tenant, please let me know where you're tuning in from so that I can make sure that in my upcoming segments that I share information that will be helpful or beneficial for you. So Lynette, we had some good weather up here today. How was the weather down in North Carolina? Um, Today, I don't know where you're tuning in from, but in the DC metropolitan area, the sun was shining bright. Today was a really great day to be outside, to be outdoors, to take in all the sunshine, to take in all of the sun rays. Me personally, I really wanted to get on my motorcycle and ride, but my schedule did not permit because I had to work. And as a housing professional, as a business owner and entrepreneur, sometimes the leisure activities and the luxuries such as riding my motorcycle or hanging out sometimes just doesn't fit my workday. But I promised Lynette that I'm going to get on that bike sometime this week. But anyway, so on today, if you saw in the description, we are talking about information that landlords and or tenants should know before renting. Guys, we are still in the pandemic. And people everywhere are impacted by COVID-19, whether they are impacted personally or maybe because of someone that they know. But I promise you that some way, somehow, some shape or form that you or someone you know is impacted by the pandemic thanks to COVID-19. So here's the thing. You had warm, nice sunny weather, Lynette. I know that's right. Hope that you got out to enjoy it as well. But guys, so here's the thing, right? Landlords and tenants, they are in a really tight situation. Some are. Not everybody's negatively impacted by COVID-19 or the pandemic or the eviction moratorium. There are tenants who are moving and there are landlords who are leasing up properties. Ask me, how do I know? Because I just secured a really large contract with a client who has a lot of property. And so they are looking for tenants, and tenants will always need a place to call home, right? So no matter where you are, no matter where you are in the United States, you always need a roof over your head. Some people will never be able to own a home. And honestly, some people just don't want to own a home, right? So that means that there will always be renters. and there will always be landlords. And so my goal is to bridge the gap between landlords and tenants by sharing information that will help both entities, right? So landlords need help, tenants need help. Well, that's where I come in at. So today I want to share information. And if you have questions, if you have comments, please drop it in the comment box and I will respond to them accordingly. And I promise I'm not going to take up most of your time, much of your time rather, but I'll take up just enough time to give this helpful information. All right. So again, thank you, Lynette, for sharing. Guys, if you like the broadcast, of anything that I share is helpful, informative, if you like it, go and give me a thumbs up, a heart, as well as forward this. Okay. So the first thing that I want landlords and tenants to know is this. Before renting, before signing a lease, understand the terms of the agreement. Because just like a relationship or just like a marriage, you don't want to just get into bed with anybody, right? Well, you know what? Don't answer that question because some of you might not answer the way that I would. But you definitely want to understand the relationship, the agreement, the contract you are about to enter, right? So unless you just head over heels in love with the tenant or the landlord or the rental property and you just want to sign on the dotted line and move in without reading it, the one thing that I strongly recommend is to understand the terms of the contract. Okay, so what does that mean? I'm glad that you asked. So before signing a lease, consider the term that that lease agreement is going to be. Is it going to be a short-term lease? Is it going to be maybe like a 1-month lease, a 3-month, a 6-month, or a 12-month lease? Some rental lease agreements are much longer than that. Some rental lease agreements can be 3 to 5 years. But you want to understand the terms of the contract. Here's why that's important, okay? Because we are still in the pandemic, and some people may have income today and may lack the income tomorrow. So for landlords, I strongly recommend, unless you are renting to an applicant or a prospect that's in some sort of housing subsidy program, I'm recommending that landlords have a little more leniency or flexibility on the terms of the rental lease agreement. Because tenants, like I said, they may have the income today and just may not have it tomorrow. They may be out of work, or maybe, some sort of sickness or illness could come upon them, which would cause them to be in a situation where they may not be able to afford the lease, the rent. All right. So understanding the terms of the contract, setting a flexible term and communicating that upfront, I think that that's very important because it really establishes the integrity of that landlord and tenant relationship. Because rental property businesses it's so much more than just collecting rent at the beginning of the month. It's about managing that landlord and tenant relationship. I have this philosophy that I've adapted. I don't recall where I heard it from, but customer service is not just a department, it's a mindset. And so when you are entering into a rental lease agreement as a landlord, please keep in mind that your tenants are looking to you, expect for you to provide professional services in addition to a home that's decent, safe, and sanitary. Okay. So customer service, be customer service driven. Be the person that people want to rent from. Okay. No matter where your property is, I promise I get calls from tenants that I've leased up well over 5 years ago. Maybe they're coming out of the lease, or maybe they recommended my services to somebody else that they know. Be customer service driven. Okay. It just doesn't pay to be nasty. All right. In my previous Facebook and YouTube live, I shared a situation where shortly after my father passed away, I should have been home grieving. And I think it was maybe like 4 or 6 days after my father passed away. Now, I really should have been off of work, but me trying to be superwoman, the shero, and save the community because I just felt like I needed to be at the rental property managing. I didn't take time off. And so there came a situation and I snapped on a tenant. Didn't make me feel good because that's just not who I am as a person. But here's the thing, we are human. Everybody's human. Everybody make mistakes. But the one thing that I don't take pride in doing is making the same mistake over and over and over. Granted, you have some tenants who are nasty, as well as landlords can be nasty and mean and bitter, and just wake up on the wrong side of the bed every day. But I promise you that with rental property businesses, whether you're the landlord, you're the property manager, you're the owner, you're a real estate investor or a broker, whatever your capacity is, property management, rental property business is a customer service industry. Please make sure that you're in it for the right reason. And always remember the golden rule: treat everybody right, treat people the way that you want to be treated. Right. And so you want to make sure that you're treating people fairly. Okay. Because fair housing laws are in place, and laws are in place to protect tenants as well as landlords. So treat everybody right. All right. So again, you want to make sure that you understand the terms of the lease agreement. And landlords, I'm suggesting again that you have a little flexibility on the terms of the agreement. So let's just say you decide to do a 12-month lease, okay? And the tenant in month number 6 decide that they want to break the lease because they can no longer afford to live there. They've been a great tenant, they've taken care of the property, and as a landlord, maybe you're sorry to see them leave, okay? Be flexible to allow them to break the lease versus trying to strong arm them and keeping them held to the terms and bound according to the terms of the rental lease agreement. I just strongly believe that you can catch more bees with honey than you can with vinegar. So it just pays to be nice. All right. And so let me speak to the tenants because I've been speaking primarily to landlords. If you are a market tenant, meaning that you're not in a Section 8 program, you're not a veteran, you're not in a veterans program, you don't have any other housing assistance, or no government agency is assisting you with paying your rent. Here's what I want you to understand: that when you sign on the dotted line, you are signing a contract. That is a legally binding document. Please understand what you are signing before you sign on that dotted line. That's going to be so important because so many people in a lot of different places and jurisdictions. Hey, Pearline, thank you so much for tuning in from ATL. I know it was nice and sunny and warm down there today. But people everywhere are getting into situations where they don't really understand what they're signing. So this is why I strongly recommend that if you are signing a lease as a tenant, read it first. If it's something you don't understand, please ask that landlord, because what you don't know can and will hurt you. Okay. If it's something that you're not comfortable with, ask that landlord or the property manager if maybe you could reschedule the appointment, or ask them to send you the lease in advance so that you can review it up front and ask questions. Ask plenty of questions. Ask a million questions if you don't understand. Okay. Oh, wow, Pearline, you said it was 78 degrees. You're really rubbing it in. It wasn't that warm up here. I would have loved to have been down there riding my motorcycle, Pearl. Hey, Greg, thank you so much for tuning in from Jacksonville, Florida. I know it was nice and sunny down there, Greg. I know it was. As tenants, just understand what you are getting into. Make sure that it's a lease agreement, it's a landlord that you're comfortable with, that you're comfortable renting from. Okay, and my second point is this: when you are, as a landlord, when you are setting the rental amount, you want to make sure that tenants can actually afford the rent. Here's the rule of thumb, okay? I'm going to share this information. It's the rule of thumb throughout the land, okay? The rent, let's say the rent is $1,000. The rule of thumb is this: the tenant's rent should always be affordable, all right? So the rent is $1,000. Their income should be at least $3,000, okay? So 30% of their income should be allocated towards rent. And I know a lot of places and a lot of people are overextending themselves and they're paying more they really can afford. So I would say 30%, not more than 40% of their income should be allocated towards the rent. Here's why that's going to be important. And I want you to understand how to calculate this up front, because when you know this, You can properly screen prospects who are coming in. You can explain to the applicant, and you already know that their financial situation is going to allow them the financial ability to pay the rent on time. Okay, so $1,000 is the rent. Okay, their income should be at least $3,000. So that's 30% of their income. That's a third of their income. All right, so tenants, here's the thing. All right, so I'm gonna pull up my calculator because I am not a mathematician. I love science in school. Math, it's not my favorite, but I'll make it do what it do because I have to do reports and I have to calculate the money that's coming in. Okay. All right, so I'm going to use, for instance, calculator. Here we go. All right, so let's take a tenant who makes about 3,200 gross. Now this is before taxes, okay? Before pre-tax dollars, $3,200 a month. I'm going to multiply that by 12. So that's an annual income of $38,400. Okay, so 38,400. Can somebody put that in the chat box? $38,400. All right, so I'm just going to walk you through the process. I'm going to just walk it out. The steps to calculating the income to know that it's affordable. All right, so annual income of $38,400. I'm going to multiply that by 30%. Okay. So 30% of 38,400 is 11,520. All right. So that is the amount. That is the amount for the total year that that tenant can afford to pay for rent. All right. So 30% of 38,400 is 11,520. So I am going to divide 11,520 by 12 for 12 months in a year. Okay. And when I do that, that gives me $960. So someone with an annual income of $38,400, 30% of their income is $960. All right. That's what they can afford to pay each month. Hey, Joe, how are you, sir? Thank you so much for tuning in, big brother. So this is essentially how you calculate the rent. All right. This is how you determine what's affordable. So whether you're the landlord or whether you're the tenant, before either of you sign on that dotted line, calculate the income to determine how much rent you can afford to pay each month. Because an annual income of 38,400, anything over 960 might not be affordable. Okay, so you have rent, then there are utilities. Let's say that this tenant has a child or children off of that income. And let's just say something comes up, Christmas comes up, or a birthday party comes up. What's the first thing that many people do? Okay, they're going to make sure that their kids are taken care of. They're going to make sure that their pressing responsibilities are financially taken care of. And so if they are overextending themselves financially, then sometimes it creates a situation, it creates a hardship where now maybe they don't pay their rent or they're paying their rent late because they have other things to take care of and it's just not affordable. So when you know how much you can afford, when you know as a tenant what your foundation, what your bottom line is, you already know, okay, don't go over this amount. Okay. And I get it. I get it. A lot of people are looking for places to move and they're willing to pay rent that is far above, that exceeds their level of being able to afford it. All right. Don't rob Peter and Paul just to try to make ends meet. You want to make sure that you're comfortable with what you're paying monthly. All right. Because the rent amount is not going to change. In many cases, landlords will give a rent increase. The rent will go up. All right. Bills will go up. But if your income is not going up, you might likely find yourself in a situation where you can't afford to pay the rent. And when tenants can't afford to pay the rent, what happens? Usually landlords will take them to court and have them evicted. So when you know how to calculate your income, when you know what is affordable upfront, you won't allow yourself to get in a situation as a tenant that you can't afford. And as a landlord, I get it. It's a business. And I've shared this philosophy many, many times before that if you treat it like a business, it will pay you like a business. If you treat it like a hobby, well, it's going to pay you like a hobby. So you have to treat it like a business and run your business as such. So if you know upfront, first of all, when you collect an application, you should be collecting the tenant's proof of income. Now, let me just throw this in here because I know a lot of people, they create pay stubs to try to make things work. Been there, done that, got a t-shirt, wrote a book on it, okay? Landlords, please verify your tenant's income. All right? Yes, it's true that some people make pay stubs. Is it fair? It's not my place to say yes or no, but sometimes people will do whatever is necessary so that they can get the result that they're looking for. All right. So, as a landlord, you're running your business like a business. You're going to verify their income. All right. So, if they have a job, you also want to collect their bank statements. All right. So, usually, here's what I do: if I have a tenant who works, I ask for 6 consecutive pay stubs. The 6 most recent pay stubs, that's what I'm asking them for when they are providing an application to rent any of my units. All right. In addition to pay stubs, I ask for bank statements. I'm asking for 6 consecutive months of their checking account because I want to verify that their income is going into the bank. People ask me, well, Carissa, can you do that? If that is the criteria for your application process, then yes, you can absolutely make it a requirement to verify income. All right. Because again, what we don't know can and will hurt us on both sides of the aisles, landlords as well as tenants. Okay. So you're verifying income as a landlord. Okay. So tenants, now you hear me sharing this information with landlords. Okay. So if you know you out there, you got your sister, you got your little boo thing, they making pay stubs. Listen, I'm on Facebook. I'm in the Facebook groups and I see the chats. I see people asking about if they know somebody that know how to make pay stubs. Listen, any thorough landlord will verify your income. All right. So just FYI that landlords are aware of what they should be doing. Okay. So that they're not just asking for pay stubs. They're asking for bank statements because they want to see the money coming into the bank account. You want to verify the income. All right. So you're verifying the income. And as a landlord, if you realize that this tenant is kind of stretching their income or they're forcing themselves financially to afford moving into your place, do yourself a great service and get a renter who can actually afford it. Because the one thing that you never want to do is allow a tenant to move in knowing upfront that they cannot afford to pay the rent because it's going to put them in a tight spot eventually. And it's going to sometimes put you in a tight spot as a landlord because you won't have that money coming in. But then again, honestly, is that fair? So let's say you have a tenant as a landlord, right? You have a tenant that moves in, you don't really care about their income because I've come across some shysty people, they don't care. You know, they're just going to do what they do. And so you rent to a tenant, their only income is Social Security. All right, let's just say they get $2,000 a month, okay? And the rent is $1,100. It's not fair to them that, well, let me just say, be fair to them. So you already know that they can't afford to stay in that place. So they're paying most of their Social Security check or whatever their fixed income check is to pay the rent. Now, I understand a lot of people don't really care how tenants pay the rent, where they get the money from. They just want the rent paid. But I'm just asking that if you run it like a business, you have tenants in place for long term. All right. So you want tenants that will be in place, that will be able to pay the rent, that will take care of the property like it's their own, that won't damage it, that won't have to end up paying late fees or skip months of rent because they just simply can't afford it. All right. Greg, your question is how to get a proper contract for rent. Greg, be a little bit more specific. What type of contract? Are you talking about a lease? Is that what you're asking about? Because I have that information. I can share that with you. So be a little bit more specific, Greg. All right. So again, just make sure that it's affordable. All right. So knowing how to calculate the rent upfront. knowing how to calculate the income, I'm sorry, to determine if the rent is affordable. All right. So remember, I said you want to make sure that you understand the terms of the rental lease agreement. You want to make sure that the rent is affordable. And then again, you also just want to make sure that it's flexible. All right. And if there is any type of communication barrier or gap, follow up in writing, document, document, document. If you have a conversation with your landlord, if you have a conversation with your tenant, still follow up in writing just to make sure that it's clear and that there is no misunderstanding. Okay, so Greg, you said lease, how to get a proper lease for rent. Okay, so Greg, I have that information for you. I'm going to send you a link, and some of the services that I use, the lease preparation service that I use, it gives information for multiple jurisdictions. And I love it because it knows the law in each particular jurisdiction. Because knowing the law is going to be so important, which brings me to my third and final point for today. Make sure that you understand what the landlord and tenant law of that particular land is. So if it's in North Carolina, if it's in Raleigh, if it's Charlotte, if it's Atlanta, if it's Jacksonville, if it's Washington, D.C., right? You want to know what the law is or the laws are in that particular jurisdiction. Because from one city, from one state, from one jurisdiction to the next, the laws may differ. They're not all going to be the same. Okay, so the information that I'm sharing, I pretty much share generic, universal information, but I always ask where my viewers are tuned in from so I can give you information specific to your jurisdiction. All right, so Greg, inbox me your email address. I'll send you the link where you can go online and you can look up a couple of lease services that I actually use. And I'm sure that you'll find it extremely helpful. All right. So those are the tips that I just wanted to share for today, because I believe that landlords and tenants should know. Now, tenants should also know the law. All right. Because sometimes tenants rely too heavily on landlords to know what the laws are. And unfortunately, all landlords, our property managers or owners, don't know the laws. All right. And I get it. Some tenants, they say, well, they should know because they're owners, they're landlords, they're real estate investors, they're renting property. They should know what the law says. Perhaps, but some people haven't taken a class. They don't know what the laws are in that particular jurisdiction. And that's just real talk. That's just the reality of it. Some people just don't know. So tenants, please know what your rights and responsibilities are as a tenant. Don't always rely on that landlord to give you information, okay? Some landlords are good. They're great like me and will share information, right? But then you have landlords who won't. You have landlords who don't care. You have landlords who don't have a heart for what they do. They just want the money. And it's their call. If it's their property and if that's all they care about, then who can say anything about it, right? They're running it like whatever type of business they feel like they need to run it as. So I hope this information was helpful. So Greg, inbox me your email address and I will send you the service that I use to prepare lease agreements. All right. If you have additional comments or questions, please feel free to drop it in the comment section and I will respond to them accordingly. Guys, thank you so much for your time. I'm Carissa, the landlord and tenant coach. And again, if you are on YouTube, please find my YouTube page. Please push that subscribe button and join me next Monday right here on Facebook or YouTube. Bye for now.